In tonight's 7 UpFront report, we're taking a closer look at the governor's new state task force to tackle poverty during the pandemic. Joining me is one of those newly appointed members, Kim Trent, who's also the Deputy Director for Prosperity with the Michigan Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity. That's quite the title. Thank you for joining us here tonight.
It is a long title indeed.
Well, let's
Thank
begin
you.
with helping families with housing and financial assistance. Kim, how will this work?
Well, I should just point out that the Poverty Task Force is designed to be both for the short term, for some of the situations that we find ourselves in. The governor put together the Poverty Task Force in December of 2019. So we really think she was really prescient long before we knew the coronavirus was going to be the devastating phenomenon that it is. She pulled together 14 State Department directors and brought them to the table with the idea of really building a state agenda, policy agenda to help those Michiganders who are struggling. We have about 43% of Michiganders who are not able, working Michiganders, who go to work every day, but are still not able to pay for their basic needs, things like housing, food, and being able to send their kids to school so they can have a quality educational experience. So in December of 2019, she announced the task force. We've been working ever since then to pull together a long range strategy to rebuild our state's, to rebuild our safety net, and to also ensure that people who are living in poverty will have opportunity in our state. So that long range goal, making sure that they're able to get the skills that they need for 21st century jobs, higher paying jobs. Our goal is not just to help people negotiate tough times, but to help them really have the tools so that they can transcend poverty. And that's the long range goal of the Michigan Poverty Task Force.
Well, as you mentioned, this was put on the table before the pandemic, so that's quite the foresight, because the need is so much different now.
And I think that what the pandemic has laid bare for us is how very inadequate our safety net is here in the state of Michigan. We are an outlier when it comes to the amount of dollars that we dedicate to giving support to our most vulnerable citizens. And so this is a real opportunity for us to rethink the way that we approach that work.
It's so important too, Kim. Another part of that task force, expanding education and school and after-school food programs. Tell us about that portion.
Well, we have, the good thing about having 14 State Department directors at the table is that we have a multi-dimensional approach. So all of those things, education, education really is a major part of it. I'm a former board member for a university here, Wayne State University. I'm a big believer in the power of education. Everyone will tell you that education, particularly higher education, is by far the best anti-poverty program that one can come up with. And so the governor is really focused on programs like Futures for Frontliners, which is rewarding. It's almost like a GI Bill for those people who were on the front lines during the early days of our pandemic, giving them an opportunity to go back to school, paying last dollar tuition fees so they are able to go back to school, but not just giving them tuition dollars, giving them those wraparound services. So if you're a single mother who is working as a clerk, want to go back to school, want to get maybe a associate's degree from a community college, but wonder what are you going to do with your kids? You got to find childcare, you have to find transportation. We really try to approach this in a really multidimensional way. So we're really excited that this is not just, I think a lot of times when people think about the state's role in poverty, they're thinking about the Department of Health and Human Services. They might think about my department, the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity, because we do workforce development. But really, every state department has a role in dealing with poverty. And so we're really glad that we were able to kind of unsilo the work so that everyone who, it was kind of all hands on deck. And I think that the design of the task force was really smart in that way.
Mm-hmm. So if you find yourself in that position, you're a family, you are that mother that you described, what can you do to get the help? Who can you contact? And how long will it take to get some help?
Well, I think that's a great question. Again, the Department of Health and Human Services, because of COVID, has really been very nimble in being able to address issues. There are a lot of Michiganders who are hurting, who maybe have never been in a situation before where they had to rely on state resources. So I think if you start there with the Department of Health and Human Services, if you have an immediate need, things like shelter, food, if you need cash assistance, that's certainly the department that you start with. But the good thing about the Poverty Task Force is we're leveraging all of our departments so that you may enter the state and get assistance in the state from DHHS, but there are other departments that are working to try to solve problems too. And so I would just say they can start in ways that you normally would think about it. I know that there are a lot of people who have been struggling to get unemployment insurance, which is my department, LEO, Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity. There are a lot of entry points, but we are working collaboratively with in-state government to make sure that we're more responsive, so that if someone comes in with a particular set of issues because of their poverty, we can help them in a multidimensional way.
Wow, Kim, and so appreciated and so needed. Thank you for joining us tonight and giving us some insight on how we can get some help.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
All right, Dave.